So, we're going to break down this really fascinating clash where a football fortress is basically under siege, but from the inside. You've got a struggling Atletico Madrid who look like they're in a full-blown crisis, hosting an opportunistic Valencia. This is a story all about pressure, fan frustration, and the wild, almost illogical power of playing on your home turf. To really get the vibe heading into this match, you have to understand the mood. And for Atletico fans, man, it was bleak. After a string of really bad performances, fan podcasts like Atleti Fanatics were just not holding back. This quote, it perfectly captures that raw, unfiltered frustration they had with the team's style and the results. And here is the core of the whole puzzle. I mean, look at this. The data shows this absolutely jarring contrast. At their home stadium, the Metropolitano, Atletico were a total force. Undefeated, grabbing 22 out of a possible 24 points. But on the road, it's like they were a completely different, fragile team, only scraping together 2 wins. This split personality was the very definition of their crisis. And the fan anger wasn't just about losing away games. It actually went a lot deeper. The feeling was that the manager, Diego Simeone, was just tactically stuck. No plan B when things went wrong. Fans were complaining the attack had no teeth, that they weren't creating any chances. And the pressure was really starting to mount on the key players to just deliver a spark that wasn't there. Okay, so let's switch gears for a second. Valencia was watching all of this go down, and they saw a massive opportunity. They were heading to Madrid not just to play a game, but to potentially land a knockout blow on a giant that was already wounded. Valencia's goalkeeper Julian Aguirre-Zabala just summed up their whole mentality perfectly. He knew all about Atletico's crazy home record, but his team was coming in with this defiant belief that they could be the ones to finally breach that fortress. And let's be honest here, Valencia's own away form wasn't anything to write home about. But context is everything, right? They weren't just looking at the stats. They were looking at their opponent's fragile state of mind. They saw this game against a top rival as the perfect stage to turn their own fortunes around. In matches like these, the story so often comes down to the big players up front. For Atletico, all eyes are on their main strikers, Alexander Sørloth and Julian Alvarez, a duo with, let's say, very different ideas about how to solve the team's goal-scoring problems. Yeah, the numbers here tell a really clear story about who was carrying the creative load. Julian Alvarez wasn't just leading the team with 7 goals. He was also being a playmaker, getting assists, and connecting play with way more accuracy. On paper, he was the more complete and productive forward, no question. This visual just perfectly illustrates their tactical differences. Sørloth was the classic aerial threat, right? The target man you aim crosses at. Alvarez, on the other hand, was the dynamic ground threat, using his dribbling to try and create something out of nothing. And, I mean, look at that. 27 progressive dribbles compared to Sørloth's 3. So with those 17 team-leading goals, the burden fell so heavily on Julian Alvarez. When those frustrated fans were screaming for someone to step up, his was the name on everyone's lips. The pressure to single-handedly rescue a dysfunctional attack was sitting squarely on his shoulders. So, the stage was set. On one side, you have a home team just drowning in criticism and self-doubt, clinging desperately to their home form. On the other, a challenger, full of belief, ready to break a long-standing streak. It was just a perfect recipe for a dramatic result. Given the toxic atmosphere and the team's really fragile confidence, so many experts and supporters were predicting that Valencia would at the very least get a result. An Atletico loss at home didn't just feel possible. For a lot of people, it felt likely. But football rarely follows the script, does it? When that final whistle blew, despite all the turmoil, all the criticism, and all the pressure, the fortress held. Atletico Madrid somehow secured a vital 2-1 victory. So what happened? Why did the pre-match narrative of crisis and collapse get completely flipped on its head? I mean, how did a team that looked so broken find a way to win? Well, in the end, manager Diego Simeone offered the simplest and maybe the most accurate explanation. He acknowledged the team's struggles, but pointed to a fundamental truth in football. There is a transformative power in playing at home. That bravery, he argued, it makes all the difference. And this chart really just quantifies that exact point. The gulf between the 22 points earned at the Metropolitano and the tiny 9 picked up on the road is just massive. For this team, home advantage isn't just a feeling. It's a hard statistical reality that is keeping their season afloat. But here's the crucial takeaway. While the win brought relief, it doesn't just erase the underlying problems. This result proves that home advantage is the team's absolute lifeline. It really feels like it's just papering over the very real cracks. The fan concerns about a lack of creativity and tactical flexibility are all still valid. Ultimately, this felt less like a dominant performance that signaled a true turning point, and more like a team just leaning on the comfort of their home stadium to grind out a result. It was a temporary fix for sure, not a long-term solution. And that leaves us with the big, lingering question for the rest of Atletico's campaign. Is the magic of their home fortress really enough to salvage their season? Or will the problems that plague them on the road eventually cause the walls to come crumbling down?